forward. We've also been joined by Dr. Muqtada Khan, who's Professor of International Relations at the University of Delaware. Thank you very much, Dr. Muqtada, for joining us and being a part of the newsroom. Before we start focusing more on Israel and its expansionist designs, I'd also like your perspective in the evolving situation in the Middle East, especially vis-a-vis Iran, and then, of course, Israel's interest into the matter. We've, of course, seen that this was a very important conversation that was earlier also taking place within Iran and the United States, and, of course, had a lot of influence coming in from Israel too. Given the conversations around these talks also happening now for de-escalation of the current conflict, how do you think that the subject matter is going to change, and how much of the influence of Israel is still going to matter into however ways this is going to be taken by especially the United States and responded by Iran?
Thank you for having me. See, we have reached a stage in the war where the United States cannot continue to stay in the war, especially if it continues to destabilize the oil markets and then have an inflationary impact on U.S. economy and the world economy. So the U.S. cannot continue to allow this to go on endlessly. Plus, it has ramifications for U.S. midterm elections. Whereas Iran is in such a position that it finds that the United States and Israel, and not only that, but some of the Arab countries are running short on munitions, which means that whatever meager assets that Iran has are more dangerous to all its enemies than if there was a pause and they were allowed to rebuild their arsenal. So for Iran, it is better that the war continues until it gets a very strong negotiated deal. But the issue really for the Iranians is, even if they were to come to Islamabad this week and have some kind of negotiations with Americans, and even if they have a deal, will Israel uphold that deal? If tomorrow Israel gets an opportunity to take out the new Mujtaba Khamenei, the new head of state, will Israel abstain from doing that? So for Iran, the question really is, will the US and Israel continue to uphold the dialogue? If they made a deal with Obama, the JCPOA, and then Trump withdrew from that, Biden promised to restore it, but failed to restore it. So one issue for Iran is, even if there is a negotiated outcome, is there going to be some kind of credibility on the side of the United States? Along with Iran, the people who are generally suffering in this war are the Gulf states. And for them, a lot of things have shattered. For example, their belief was that having US bases would guarantee security. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Having US bases have made them the targets of Iranian retaliation. One of the biggest post-oil planning for the Gulf was to make it a hotspot for shopping, for tourism, as an alternative residence for the rich of the world. And now, given the prolonged insecurity in the region with real estate prices falling in Dubai, the question for the Gulf is where will security for them come from, and how are they going to make sure that they can assure their customers and partners that they are secure? So we have reached a juncture where this attempt to essentially defang Iran has resulted in a regional war where there seem to be very few winners, and everybody seems to be losing more than they are gaining from it.
Absolutely. And Dr. Muqtada, given the current situation and so especially how we've seen the past couple of weeks evolve, who do you think, of course, it affects all of us in terms of what is currently going on, and all of us benefit from the end of this conflict. But who do you think is perhaps more driven to end this war at the moment and has more stakes in this ending sooner rather than later?
It's clearly Donald Trump who wants the end of this war immediately, as soon as possible, because it is having a huge impact on the United States. The price of gas here has gone up by $1. We are already suffering from what is called as a crisis of affordability. I mean, the success of Zohran Mamdani in New York was to highlight the fact that in America, life has become unaffordable for even the middle class. So with the rising prices of oil, and you must remember that when gas prices go up, it's not just the price of petrol that goes up. It has an inflationary impact. Everything from eggs to bread to anything that is moved before it is sold, that price goes up. So Donald Trump really wants to reduce this. Plus, There's a lot of wealth being lost in the stock market. The Brent oil price yesterday, before Trump started talking about the 5-day hiatus, was over $106 per barrel. And even the gas prices are up. In fact, the damage that has been done to the Qatari gas fields will take at least 3 to 5 years to fix. So there is already a significant dent in the global economy. So Donald Trump is feeling the pressure that he's being held responsible for this, and it is becoming very clear with his inability to rescue the Strait of Hormuz from Iranian clutches, that it appears to the rest of the world that Iran is proving to be far more resilient, and his bravado about demanding unconditional surrender from Iran looks more and more hollow. So I think Donald Trump wishes to end this war without further damage to his own credibility inside the MAGA crowd. Already, Americans, especially the elite in the MAGA crowd, are openly criticizing him for breaking his promises, not just with the Epstein files, but also for his promise to have no more regime wars, no more endless wars in the Middle East. And it appears that we are entering an endless war. He moved a few thousand Marines into the region, and people are afraid that there could be a ground element to this invasion. And if there is a ground invasion, then there will be higher number of casualties, and then it will look a lot more like Afghanistan or Iraq, and that was going to hurt Donald Trump's credibility, even with the MAGA crowd. The Iranians, as I said, for them, if the war ends, because there will be sanctions on Iran, even after the war, I think the pace with which Israel and America will be able to replenish their weapons will be much faster than Iran will be able to replenish its infrastructure, its missile and drone capacity. So for Iran, a peace followed by another war very soon can be far more damaging than continuing to hurt its enemies now, so that they can establish some kind of a permanent deterrence that both America and Israel will think twice before they attack it again.
Absolutely. And Dr. Muqtadir, that brings us to, of course, what Israel is and has always been engaged in terms of its larger expansionist interests. And we've seen that not just with Iran, but of course the larger Middle East as well. And you earlier mentioned about the situation in which whether Israel is going to hold its spot or not in any agreement. And so that, of course, brings us then to the larger question of whether the U.S. will have any influence, or already does have any real influence over what Israel actually decides to do in the Middle East and in the ways that it's looking towards its expansion. We've seen that despite the U.S. brokered deal in Gaza, the genocide still continues. We've seen what has happened in Iran. We've, of course, also still witnessing what's going on in Syria and Lebanon. And so, given this current scenario, how is this in any way going to impact in terms of any influence that the United States can have on Israel and its actions in the Middle East?
You know, if you are living in Dubai, or if you are United Arab Emirates, and you were to Google Akhand Bharat and Greater Israel, you will find that it appears that Akhand Bharat's expansion goes all the way uh, up to Dubai, and the map of the Greater Middle East from Nile to the Euphrates also probably includes Dubai. So Dubai has a choice whether it can become part of Greater Israel or part of Greater India. But jokes aside, I mean, those are speculative biblical maps of Greater Israel, which include parts of Iraq, parts of Saudi Arabia, and parts of Egypt also in an imaginary biblical Israel. But there is a far more practical and achievable, at least from the point of view of Israeli right-wing governments, and who are actively working about establishing a Greater Israel, which basically means establishing Israeli sovereignty exclusively on West Bank, Gaza, and whatever territory Israel has right now. And in trying to do that, the whole purpose, see, if you see with the accuracy with which the Israelis have killed Iranian leadership, the pinpoint targets with which they attacked the negotiators in Qatar, if you remember, that shows that the Israeli intelligence is really on top of their game. They can take out anybody, anytime, without affecting, you know, like they could take me out without destroying my laptop. It is that good their intelligence is. Yet they were so brutal in Gaza. They could have taken out the entire leadership of Hamas without even killing a child. They are that good. but they did this. They killed like 50 to 70,000 civilians, women and children, and destroyed the entire infrastructure of Gaza to make it unlivable, because they want the Palestinians to leave Gaza and to go away, so that then the rest of Gaza can be annexed into Israel. And now on a daily basis, there is assaults on by settlers in West Bank, and there's a constant talk about annexation of West Bank into Israel. And for whatever reason, Donald Trump has not given the green signal yet. And I think that is where the dream of the so-called Greater Israel is what I think the Israelis really think. They want to ensure that West Bank and Gaza becomes part of Israel, and they can continue to talk about the broader biblical, just to freak out the Arabs and give them nightmares and keep them scared of Israel. Because at the end of this war, what is definitely going to happen is that the American taxpayer is going to immediately pay up and rebuild Israel. So the fastest recovery will be Israel, because it will be at the expense of the American taxpayer. But with a very weak Iran and a weakened Gulf and a scared Gulf, Israel's hegemony is going to be established in the region. I have no doubt about that. Going forward, the Arabs will have to really bend the knee to Israel for a while now, for a long time. So from that point of view, you could say that in terms of actual territorial control, the Greater Israel would be probably West Bank and Gaza, and then there will be this hegemonic Israel, which will include most of the Middle East, which will be basically dancing to the tune. You can already see the expansion of Abraham Accords. Kazakhstan, it's not even part of the Middle East, joined the Abraham Accords after seeing what Israel did in Gaza, after the genocide in Gaza. So the countries increasingly in the Middle East and Central Asia find, like India, feel that aligning with Israel is more beneficial, because it allows them to get closer to the United States and closer to Donald Trump. And so that's how Israeli hegemony is being employed by Israel, essentially using American power, American preeminence globally as an instrument of Israeli hegemony.
Absolutely. And Dr. Muqtada, specifically when we talk about the current situation in Lebanon, it seems that even now we've been hearing statements coming in from Israel's leadership, including the finance minister, who's spoken about how the borders need to extend up to the Litani River. And there has been, of course, a lot of the evacuation measures and the demolition of bridges that we have seen over there. And with, of course, a lot that has happened in Gaza and the genocide that still continues, Israel has gotten away with whatever actions it has taken. Will that be the same response that will be given to Israel's actions currently happening in Lebanon? And of course, its practical demonstration of taking up the territory and moving its borders towards Litani in at least what's going on ground at the moment?
So I think the way the Israeli military people are thinking is that all its enemies at the moment are very weak. Iran has been weakened with several assaults in the last 2 years. The Hezbollah has been destroyed to a great extent. It's not the force it used to be, say, 4 years ago. So Israel is probably thinking of establishing buffer zones inside Lebanon, inside Syria, and other parts to protect itself from attacks. Even in this war, Hezbollah was shooting rockets which were having an impact on Israel. So for Israel, I think they feel that right now they are invincible. They have a lot more relative power over its enemies, especially Iran, Hezbollah. Look at the Houthis; they have been irrelevant in the war so far, and they were playing such an incredible role in the region as a threat to Iran and others. And they have been tamed completely. They are not a force that matters in this war. And I think that is what Israel wants to do with Hezbollah. And if that requires them to occupy some land, which they will use later on for negotiation purposes, or even annex it. So in that sense, you could say that Israel is seeing that they have a lot of opportunity at the moment. Plus, if you look at the rest of the world is so frightened of Donald Trump and his tariffs and his unilateral actions that no one seems to be willing to literally push back as the Soviet Union would have done during the Cold War. So even though people say that Iran is being supported by Russia and China, I think the support is so minimalist that the Americans and the Israelis don't factor Russia and China's support for all of these, whether it is Iran or any other entity such as Hezbollah or others that are standing up to Israel in the region. And plus, the situation of the Middle East, even though some countries have oil and a lot of money, there is a lack of vitality in the societies, whether it is military or not. In fact, there is a constant threat from some of these countries that they will retaliate against Iran. Really, what can Qatar do to Iran, or what can UAE? Are there Emiratis in UAE who are willing to go and fight with Iran, or for anybody for that matter? So the opponents of Israel, or even those who are challenging, even those who have economic resources, do not have the military capabilities to actually tame Israel and to create some kind of deterrence against its growing power in the region.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Muqtada Khan, for joining us and being a part of the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, our pleasure. There's, of course, a lot of concern at the moment in terms of course, the current situation in Iran and other possibilities of de-escalation. But the larger problem in the Middle East, of course,